Thank you, Francis and David. Our graduation speaker this year is Theodore Teddy Miller. For the past few days, I've gotten to know Teddy as he came here early from the East Coast so that he could get to know the seniors and better deliver a graduation speech that was meaningful to them, which already says huge amounts about him. Let me talk briefly a little bit about what he has done. He graduated Brentwood in 1995, went on to Yale, where he majored in literature and African American studies. While at Yale, he volunteered at the Center for Public Service and Justice, where he became inspired to make a difference in the lives of highly at-risk youth. And you will notice there's a theme through Teddy's life, which is about making a difference. He then went on to Harvard and received his law degree at Harvard Law School. Worked in commercial real estate for a while, actually with a former classmate from Brentwood. Then back to Harvard for his doctorate in African American Studies and Sociology. Again, examining the socio-cultural impacts of race, urban inequality on children, adolescents, and emerging adults. While at Harvard, he was also a fellow in the Hip Hop Archive and 3-time recipient of a university award for excellence in teaching. At Brentwood, when he was here at Brentwood, he was the head prefect, all CIF in both football and basketball, and had the lead in the Brentwood Theater Company's production of Pippin. Did you sleep in high school? That's all I have to know. In fact, in 1993, when the football team won the CIF championship, it was his fumble recovery inside the 20-yard line with a few seconds left in the game that secured Brentwood's 35-34 victory. In talking to some of the faculty who had Teddy as a student, one remembers him as a one-man spirit train, literally lifting the school on his shoulders and moving forward. One said, "It is the passion and humility with which Teddy attacked each venture in his life that has made him so incredibly successful." And for me, this all stems from the fact that he knows where he comes from. Spiritually centered and the son of 2 very successful parents, both are here today, Teddy values each moment of the short time we have on this earth and wants to make a difference. I heard from another source that Teddy's dad used to give him some advice. It went something like this: "Remember, son, you're never as good as they say you are. And remember, you're never as bad as they say you are." And I think that's good advice today. One of his classmates summed it up this way: "I would not make a major life decision without consulting Teddy first." So please welcome Teddy Miller back to the stage, and may have a truly makes a difference between good and great.
Thank you. It's a funny thing. You go a long way and spend a lot of time in school, but the one thing that struck me about that introduction was that fumble recovery in 1995. It's probably the thing I'm most proud of our first time. To Dr. Riera, to the Board of Trustees, the administration, faculty and staff, parents, friends, and most importantly, to the members of the graduating class of 2013. It's been such a privilege to return to this campus and spend time with you seniors over the last few days, to hear from David Zimmerman, or listen to Asia, Dylan, Tessa, Scarlett sing so beautifully on Thursday night, to sit with so many of you at your barbecue on Tuesday. And it's such an extraordinary honor for me to spend a few minutes on stage with you today to address many of my former teachers and coaches, before my 88-year-old grandmother and her sister, and hopefully share some of the mistakes and insights from my own journey since I sat in the same robe in which you now wear 18 years ago. So on protocol, let's be clear, because I know there's famous people who have come before you and spoken. As I walk around the city and sometimes get confused for the guy who used to be sort of the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, or the other Wayans brother, or the rap artist Common who caused such controversy speaking at the White House, I am neither a celebrity, nor a dignitary, nor a billionaire, nor even yet a full professor. I'm here really as a friend, a kind of messenger, hopefully midway along the journey on which you all are about to embark. I'm a rough and utterly incomplete reflection of the multiple interests, hopes, and anxieties represented by your brilliant class of 2013. In this regard, I'd like for you to go with me for the next few minutes and think on the following subject: between privilege and posters. I'm going to tell you two stories, one about a friend and one about a student. I can never come to this gorgeous campus without a deep sense of nostalgia and gratitude, and as those who graduated from high school also know, also a mixture of anxiety and discomfort. In some ways, it's a bit ironic to deliver the speech as the sort of quote-unquote poster child of the class of 1995, when many of you were born, to a class that, as far as you all tell me, has not always been the poster children of Brentwood School. But that's all good. We're in it together. You see, in my case, the privileged path is undeniable. On the one hand, like many of you have shared with me, Brentwood provided me with a triad of priceless gifts: first-rate education, lifelong relationships, and high school memories that to this day make me simultaneously laugh, cry, and scream in joy, including that fumble recovery. On memories, as Dr. Mike mentioned, singing and dancing with the Brentwood Theater Company as Pippin, when I could neither sing nor dance, and that's still the case, remain forever imprinted in my mind. And God bless you all for enduring those performances. It's sort of a funny thing what parents and teachers will do for the children that they love. I just wanted to apologize. I could never hit those high notes like David, so bless you, David. On relationships, my dear brother and fellow prefect Brad Conroy and I would come to start and build a real estate business that would simultaneously rescue me from corporate law, allow me to buy my first house in the city, and teach me the shared sacrifices of what entrepreneurship really is. To say nothing, of course, of my friendship with your own Mr. Berger, who for the last 19 or so years has taught me more about compassionate and consistent friendship than anyone I've ever known. And on education, clearly my journeys to Yale College and Harvard Law School, and most recently through the PhD program at Harvard Graduate School of Arts and Sciences, are all largely the results of the dedication, patience, and brilliance of these incredible teachers. But on the other hand, I associate my high school experience at Brentwood with a kind of poster-like role in the formation of my own identity, whether racial, gender, sexual, intellectual, during my late adolescence. I kid you not, I still vividly remember the number of times I had to arrive before school for early morning detention because I refused to shave the 5 or 10 whiskers that I thought reflected my constitutional right to bear beneath my chin. You guys can have facial hair nowadays, but it's different back then. Well, I recall all too well the frustration I caused Mrs. Torrey with my intermittent missed assignments and failure to grasp the true meaning of the Pythagorean theorem. Or I still remember the exasperated facial expressions from Senior Gannon with my less than stellar vocabulary test. Or I remember the extra hills or suicides we ran on Mr. Ingram's basketball squad or Coach Brown's championship football teams when I thought I was too cool to go full speed at the end of practice. And I definitely recall the battles with my parents and sometimes administrators when, like you, I had a desire to sleep out, be out, and just live out more freely in the way that we all think we're entitled to as 16, 17, and 18-year-olds. At the time, and in some ways now, the moments when I didn't get my way seemed like a matter of life and death. Moments of fascism versus democracy, right? An infringement on my rights as a 17-year-old. And at Brentwood, always in the background, there were these simultaneously challenging and smothering things called the expectations, right? Creating the sensibility that you were somehow living your life for a college application essay, or a parental approval, or an AP score, or an administrative acceptance. It was like a poster, a pre-constructed image of who you were supposed to be. Regardless of your experience, and there are varying degrees of joy and attachment to one's high school journey, whether you felt ease or pain in the classroom. What remains certain is that this institution is an intentionally constructed bubble, a space where dozens of adults labor every day to give you the most well-structured, well-thought-out educational experience possible. Whether that process of sending you through Brentwood was effortless or a constant struggle for you and your family, emotional, financial, spiritual, or somewhere in between, you secured a tremendous, tremendous prize. Congratulations. From childhood through adolescence, whether you were a 13-year lifer, member of Brentwood School, and lived in the neighborhood, or whether you were like me and came as a 9th grader and traveled across the 405 and across the 10 to get here, you have received a powerful but invisible privilege. Now, I have a messy secret for you, though. Something no one really tells you. The truth is, much of what you've received thus far in life has been entirely and completely unearned. And you'll understand what I mean by that. Through a combination of parenting, teaching, talent, and yes, work, you have obtained the extraordinary benefits that come from having traveled through these walls. In the words of Stanford Professor Catherine McIntosh, you've gotten a kind of knapsack. That's a backpack, for those who don't know the old school language, of privilege. Extending her metaphor, this privilege is like an invisible, weightless knapsack of special provisions, maps, passports, code books, visas, clothes, tools, and blank checks. This knapsack is real. The backpack is significant. And it is virtually, as I said, almost entirely unearned. And this is not to diminish your efforts, your hours in the classroom, or your in-room studying, or on practice fields, or in the studio. But this is to point out that the privilege that comes from the journey you had is like the oxygen we breathe. You're birthed into it. And we know its full worth only when we cease to have it. After the barbecue that I attended with many of you on Tuesday, I went to visit who was probably my very best friend from my senior class, Jerry Washington. We were backcourt mates on the varsity hoops team. We both traveled to school from Inglewood. We double dated to semi-formal proms together, and we even featured each other in those corny photos in the senior yearbook that I see many of you continue to in tradition. We both went on to play college basketball, supporting each other throughout. In some ways, elements of your own Ivan actually remind me of Jerry. Jerry was extraordinarily charismatic, compassionate, and bounced around campus, sometimes dancing, as I can imagine Ivan might, with an energy and enthusiasm that belied claims of adolescent laziness and lethargy. He had bright, big, light eyes, like Shane in the front row. And as he once told me, he had the heart of a fighter on the basketball court. Probably, I imagine, not dissimilar to Aaron Fritz on the baseball field. And like Julian Bond and Max Shapiro seemed to me, in the couple of days I spent with him, Jerry had an earnest, heartfelt sensitivity, a kind of innocence and purity that just made you want to sit with him. 13 years ago last month, Jerry collapsed on the basketball floor in a cardiac arrest due to an undiagnosed and enlarged left ventricle. Of course, his heart is too big. Hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. He went into seizures and lost oxygen to his brain for nearly 30 minutes. Still alive, he would never be the same. My best friend from my graduating class has not spoken a word or voluntarily chewed one piece of food or cracked one joke since we last spoke 13 years ago. He is confined to a wheelchair these days as his parents labor in faith by his side, caring for him and loving the spirit that they see beneath the veneer of weakened, atrophied, and quiet skin. I'm not so sure what I see when I'm with him, and even 2 days ago I still find it simultaneously grounding and painful to visit him on the rare occasions that I return to Los Angeles. The privilege, the knapsack you now have, is so incredibly fragile. In the fall of 2000, several weeks into my first semester at Harvard Law School, I delivered my first eulogy, a halfway incoherent attempt to reconcile the life and death of David Rigsby, 15 years old, high school dropout, and the victim of a gunshot wound to the head. At the time, I was 23 years old and 3 months removed from my first job as a mental health worker in a children's psychiatric hospital. By the time I met David, he was doing poorly in middle school, behaviorally and academically. His father, incarcerated the year prior, was in the midst of another 18-month term for drug possession. To this day, his father is still addicted to drugs. David lived at a 3-bedroom home on the second floor of a multi-unit building in inner city New Haven, just blocks from the magical old campus of Yale University, in a house that was at one time, home, a Victorian single-family home to the working-class Italian immigrants that occupied the city some time ago. David lived with his younger sister, his younger brother, his grandmother, and his mother Charlene, a hard-working single parent who ironically worked for the Connecticut Department of Children and Family Services. David died poor, undereducated, having had multiple run-ins with the New Haven Public Schools and police departments. And David loved DMX, and would insist I play the hip-hop artist every time he jumped in my car. The louder, the better. David was one of the most beautiful people I ever knew, and as a young, naive college kid, I believed that I could save him. The circumstances surrounding David's death are still not entirely clear. At the time that he was murdered, and his mother phoned in tears with a request for me to verbally make sense of it all for her congregation, I was physically shaken and not much older than many of you. 5 years ago, I would read about the death and circumstances surrounding his younger brother, a child who allegedly wielded a knife at a young woman in a New Haven club, only to lead police on a high-speed chase to his violent death in flames. His mother gently tells me that the press accounts of Troy are simply untrue. I first met David when he was 11. Troy was not yet 9 years old. Both are now dead. Neither reached their 21st birthday. Before completing law school, I would deliver 2 additional eulogies and attend the funeral of another adolescent whom I called student, mentee, or patient during my days in New Haven. The privilege, the knapsack you now have, is incredibly significant. 2 years ago, I had dinner in New Haven with Charlene, the now single mother who laid not just David to rest, but 8 years later, her second son, Troy. Her daughter is now 13, as she was barely a toddler at the time I delivered David's eulogy. And she has another son, Kyle, 9 years old, and born, she tells me, literally on the anniversary of David's murder. Kyle's birthday is both bitter and sweet for her, a reminder of the firstborn whom she'll never see again. She has moved from New Haven, having bought a house a town over in the multi-ethnic integrated working-class neighborhood of West Haven, utilizing first-time home buyer incentives some years ago. The home is at a dead-end street, intentionally, she tells me, so her 2 remaining children can't find any trouble. The children look like splitting images of the brothers they will never know. I can tell, like little David and Troy, that they too, like you, will have dreams. Steve Jobs, the founder and creator of Apple Computers, in a widely circulated commencement speech to the graduating classes at Stanford before his own death, reminded the graduates, if you live each day as if it was your last, someday you'll most certainly be right. Right? The stories about Jerry, my dearest of Brentwood friends, and David, my most prized but failed pupil, are not meant to hint at morbidity or down you, but rather to underscore the fragility of this privilege you have, the sacredness of both the invisible knapsack on your backs and of the moment you now enter. In my graduating class, we've lost at least one member, Robbie, and then of course there's Jerry. See, in my days at Brentwood, we went through the LA riots and didn't have iPads or smartphones. Can you imagine that? There was no pool, nor the football field in which we now sit. The elementary school had only started during our senior year, and affinity groups were few and far between. In your generation, you've lived through Katrina and Sandy Hook. The school is growing. Y'all have email accounts and iPads, and the world seems even smaller, and your dreams even more realizable. This is your moment. But for all of us, and for none more so than you, the young, the privilege is so fragile. For me, that space between privilege, those bundles of experiences that you should collectively celebrate and embrace today and throughout your life, and the posters, those expectations that others and sometimes you have of yourself, that space between is given meaning by personal, social reflections. Demographers and social scientists call you Generation Y, the millennial generation. The poster they painted you may sound familiar. Gene Schwinn refers to you as Generation Me, pointing to a mix of confidence and tolerance, like that, right? But also entitlement and narcissism. Some paint you as the first American generation unable and unwilling to hold a steady job, a collective group impatiently focused on wealth more so than civics and common good, cynical, hyper-competitive, technologically savvy and yet obsessed with social capital, single-minded in the moment, paying your dues means nothing, and so on. But for me, having watched you these last few days, having worked with your peers elsewhere, I'm inspired. I see something potentially remarkable in between the privilege and the posters. My 4-year-old niece asked me the other day, "Uncle Teddy, what do you want to be when you grow up?" Taken aback, I said in my most stern, adult, and serious voice, "Well, Mari, of course, I'm a graduate of Harvard Law School. Uncle is an attorney, and is studying and does work for government." "No, but what do you want to be when you grow up?" She persisted. And as any good teacher will tell you, you, the young, pierce our own uncertainties with your curiosity. Because the truth is that this in-between is a space perpetually available to you. If you're lucky, if you're privileged, if you're healthy, to constantly explore who, for the good of the whole, you want to be. Using me as an example, eternally rough and unpolished, as you leave this bubble, I encourage you to run or walk, fly or just jump into the depth of that space in between your privilege, which is real and powerful and meaningful, and these posters of you, right? The posters that some, including here in this space, with good hearts and love and intentions have for your life. The posters that even you recirculate through Twitter or Instagram or Facebook or whatever new medium one of you might one day create. More than any generation ever before, I believe yours appears caught in between privilege and posters. For me, the avenue has been children, community, and service. The lanes that allow me to go as deep as I can to that in-between, that space between the privilege and posters of my own life. At its height, that space has been inherently selfless, inherently cathartic, inherently better for our world, and so much fun. The in-between, in the in-between, I don't really look at grades anymore. Imagine that. Or seek to impress, although I cherish meaningful feedback and compassionate criticism. I'm less concerned about money and power, and more concerned about Sandy Hook, or tsunamis, or how the young won Selma from segregationists. In fact, failure and confronting challenge appear significantly more meaningful in the in-between spaces. With the security of privilege and the comfort of these poster-like images as poles, the in-between space acts as a kind of platform that catapults you deeper and deeper to serve and connect with others. But I tell you, it requires moments away from the smartphone. It requires looking failure in the mirror. It requires asking others for help. It requires letting go of the things you just knew you knew so you can learn what you don't. Jerry Washington once told me in that classic cliche-esque way that us high schoolers love to use at the top of our senior yearbook pages, it's not about the size of the dog in the fight. It's about the size of the fight in the dog. Jerry was right. But neither of us realized then how fragile that fight really is. How fleeting that moment really becomes. So after today, I'll see you on the other side of the bubble. Some of you may lead from behind, like a shepherd. Some in front, like an explorer or an artist or scientist. Some may labor quietly, others loudly. But with youth and that invisible knapsack of privilege you each now have, sitting back is unacceptable. As Dr. King once said, human progress never rolls in on wheels of inevitability. So when I see you, I won't point out your knapsack, I promise, or tell you that yours is bigger than mine as long as you promise to remember it and humbly do the same for me. But I, along, I imagine, with many others in this tent, will be waiting and patiently expecting you to lead me, us, even deeper, with passion and commitment and privilege outside of our bubbles, to a world that is so much bigger out there than you can possibly imagine, to a world that needs you so much more than you can possibly know, to have the courage to be the poster child of your own lives for the good of us all.